The world remembers Abraham Lincoln as a monument, stone-faced, immovable, certain. But monuments don't tell you how a man breathes at 2 a.m. Monuments don't show you shaking hands in the dark. Monuments don't show you the private wars fought behind closed doors. Before Lincoln became the symbol of strength that held a nation together, he was known for something else entirely, a sadness so deep people feared it might kill him. This is a story history whispers about, but rarely tells in full. Lincoln's darkness did not begin in the White House. It followed him from youth. He grew up in hardship, frontier life, manual labor, loss that came too early. His mother died when he was 9. The world did not pause. Work continued. Survival continued. Grief had no ceremony on the frontier. People who knew him as a young man described long silences, a distant stare, a tendency to withdraw into thought, as if he lived half in another world. He joked often, sharp, clever humor, but those who paid attention noticed something underneath. The humor wasn't lightness. It was armor. He read constantly. Law books, poetry, Shakespeare, especially the tragic passages. Words about sorrow, fate, and suffering seemed to cling to him. He memorized lines about grief the way other men memorize songs. Even then, friends use a word for his condition, melancholy. Today we might call it severe depression. Back then, there was no language for it beyond whispers and concern. In his early adulthood, Lincoln chased ambition with the intensity of someone trying to outrun himself. Politics, law, public speaking. Outwardly, he was rising. Inwardly, the weight was growing. Then came heartbreak. The death of Rutledge, a woman many believe he loved deeply, shook him in ways those around him never forgot. He withdrew for weeks, spoke little, moved like a man carrying something invisible but crushing. A close friend later said Lincoln's sorrow was so profound that people feared for his safety. They stayed near him, watched him, removed dangerous objects from his surroundings during his lowest periods. Not because he was weak, because the darkness was relentless. He once wrote that he was the most miserable man living, and that if what he felt were distributed equally to the human race, there would not be one cheerful face on the earth. That is not the language of passing sadness. That is the voice of someone in a deep psychological storm. Years passed. Lincoln built a career, married Mary Todd, became a father, but the shadow did not leave. Friends described episodes where he would fall into long spells of despair. He would sit quietly, eyes unfocused, as if his mind had gone somewhere unreachable. Yet here is the paradox. The same man who felt life so painfully also developed an extraordinary capacity for empathy. He understood suffering not as an idea, but as a lived reality. And history was about to give him a nation drowning in pain. The United States fractures. War erupts. Lincoln steps into the presidency at the most dangerous moment in American history. The country sees a leader. What they do not see are the nights, the sleepless pacing, the letters he writes and never sends, the weight of sending thousands of young men into battle, knowing many would not return. The Civil War was not an abstract strategy to Lincoln. Every casualty report cut deep. Visitors to the White House saw a man age beyond his years. Lines deepened. His shoulders stooped. He carried sorrow not only for himself, but for an entire nation. His son Willie died in the White House during the war. The grief nearly broke him. But something unexpected happened. The darkness that followed him his entire life began to change shape. Lincoln's struggle had taught him endurance. When you live for decades of emotional weight and still rise each morning, you develop a kind of psychological stamina others cannot see. He did not panic easily. He did not collapse under pressure, because he had already survived storms inside his own mind that were just as frightening. His melancholy gave him patience, depth, humility. He did not see leadership as glory. He saw it as responsibility, heavy, painful, unavoidable. When generals failed, he did not explode in ego. When critics attacked him, he absorbed it, because compared to the battles he had fought alone in silence, public criticism was survivable. Here lies the secret. Lincoln's sadness did not disqualify him from greatness. It prepared him for it. He understood suffering, so he fought to end it. He knew despair, so he refused to give in to it. He carried pain, so he could carry a nation. His most terrifying weakness became the foundation of his strength. In April 1865, the war was ending. The country was healing. Lincoln spoke of reconciliation, not revenge. A man who had lived with darkness chose mercy. Days later, he was assassinated. History remembers the shot, but the deeper story is a lifetime before it. The quiet war he fought and survived long enough to change the world. The monuments show you the stone, but the truth is more powerful. The great emancipator was not unbreakable. He was a man who knew the depths and still chose to rise. And sometimes the strongest leaders are not the ones without shadows. They are the ones who have walked through them and kept going. In the 1800s, they didn't have clinical terms or therapy rooms. They had words like melancholy, despondency, the vapors. Abraham Lincoln had his own word for it. He called it the Hypo, short for hypochondria, but not in the modern sense. It was a name he gave to the crushing waves that would overtake his mind without warning. A heaviness that settled in his chest, slowed his speech, dimmed the world. From the outside, young Lincoln was ambitious, intelligent, rising. Inside, something followed him. Loss found him early. His mother died when he was a boy. The kind of loss that reshapes a child before he understands what reshaping means. Years later, his sister died. The small circle of stability he knew kept breaking. And then came in Rutledge. Her death struck like lightning, sudden, violent, blinding. Friends said something in him changed permanently afterward. The humor grew sharper but rarer. The silences grew longer. He withdrew, walked alone for miles, stared into distances no one else could see. One friend found him wandering near the woods, eyes hollow, movement slow, not drunk, not ill, but emptied, as if grief had drained the color from the world. This was no ordinary sadness. It was collapse. Lincoln himself described it with terrifying clarity. He wrote, "I am now the most miserable man living. If what I feel were equally distributed to the whole human family, there would not be one cheerful face on earth." That was not exaggeration. That was testimony. Those close to him worried constantly during these episodes. They stayed near him, not because he asked, but because they feared what isolation might do to him. In his lowest periods, he had to be watched. He was a young man carrying the emotional weight of someone who had lived a lifetime already. And yet, he kept going. He studied law, practiced speaking, entered politics. The outside world saw progress. The inside war continued. His mind would sometimes drop into darkness without clear cause, days where everything felt pointless, heavy, distant. He functioned, but barely, like a man walking underwater. He joked about it sometimes, calling it the hypo, but the humor was thin. It was a way to name the shadow, without being consumed by it. The secret is not that Lincoln felt sad. It's how often he felt it, and how close it came to breaking him. Long before history ever knew his name. So, why didn't he surrender to it? Why didn't the man who felt the most miserable simply step away from life? Somewhere along the years, Lincoln discovered something that cannot be taught in comfort. Suffering, endured long enough, changes your relationship with pain. Most people panic when life becomes unstable. Lincoln had lived in instability for decades. Emotional storms no longer shocked him. He knew how to survive them, not gracefully, not easily, but steadily. He learned that feelings could lie, that despair could be loud without being permanent, that the mind could predict doom and still be wrong. Every episode of darkness he survived became proof that he could outlast his worst thoughts. This built something inside him that few others had, emotional endurance. When the Civil War exploded and the country fractured, politicians around him panicked. Fear spread, voices shook, futures seemed impossible. Lincoln had already lived inside impossibility. He had already woken up in mornings where hope felt unreachable and still moved forward. War did not introduce him to pressure. It introduced him to responsibility. He carried grief like a familiar weight. That familiarity allowed him to stay steady, while others spiraled. Where others reacted, he absorbed. Where others shouted, he listened. Where others broke under criticism, he endured. The fire that had burned in his mind for decades had tempered him. Like iron hammered again and again, he had been shaped by repeated blows no one saw. He did not gain strength in spite of the darkness. The darkness trained him. It carved depth into him, gave him patience for suffering, compassion for pain, tolerance for uncertainty. The secret Lincoln never spoke about publicly was not that he overcame depression once and left it behind. It was that he walked with it and still led. The private war inside him built the endurance required to lead a nation through its public war. He had already survived the longest nights. So when history's darkest hour arrived, he did not look away. He stood. The battlefield was chaos. Smoke rolled across torn fields. Cannons roared. Flags fell. Boys who had never shaved lay in mud that would never wash off history. And in the center of it all, not with a rifle, not on a horse, but at a desk under gaslight, sat a man who understood suffering in a way few leaders ever have. Abraham Lincoln did not study pain from reports alone. He recognized it because he lived with his own every day. The letters came in stacks. Casualty lists, names, thousands of them. Sons, fathers, brothers, each one a universe ending, each one a family broken. Lincoln read them. Not all presidents do. He would pause over certain names, eyes lingering. Visitors said they saw him hold letters longer than necessary, as if absorbing some fraction of the grief meant for others. He visited hospitals when he could, long rows of wounded soldiers, the smell of antiseptic and blood thick in the air, men missing limbs, men barely alive, men calling for mothers who would never hear them. Lincoln did not rush those visits. He sat beside beds, held hands, listened, not as a symbol, as a man who understood quiet despair. His face, already lined by years of inner struggle, seemed to carry the sorrow of a nation. Observers said he aged rapidly in office. The war etched into his features like another battlefield. And then came one of the most consequential acts in American history, the Emancipation Proclamation, a document that would redefine a nation's moral direction. When Lincoln sat to sign it, witnesses noted something small but revealing. His hand trembled, not from uncertainty, not from fear of backlash, but from exhaustion, from strain, from the toll years of war and inner battle had taken on his body and mind. He waited, steadied himself, because he understood something deeply. A signature that changed millions of lives could not be written by a shaking hand. History would see the mark. It had to be firm. So he paused until his strength returned. That moment was Lincoln in essence. A broken man, gathering himself not to collapse, but to act. His melancholy did not make him detached. It made him careful. He knew what suffering felt like. So decisions about life, death, and freedom were never abstract calculations. They were human. He once told those around him that he felt driven by something larger than personal comfort, that his trials must mean something beyond his own survival. He had lived too long with darkness to believe suffering was random. He searched for purpose in it, and he found one. If pain was unavoidable, it could at least serve something beyond himself. So he carried it, not dramatically, not loudly, but constantly. His leadership did not come from unbreakable confidence. It came from endurance, from the quiet discipline of rising each day under weight and choosing responsibility anyway. Others might have led with pride. Lincoln led with gravity. He understood fragility, of life, of unity, of hope. That understanding made him patient where others were reckless, compassionate where others were vengeful, steady where others panicked. The nation saw a leader, but the truth is deeper. A man who knew how close the mind can come to the edge, led a country standing on its own. He did not deny his brokenness. He built from it, and in doing so, he showed a kind of strength history rarely celebrates. The strength of someone who feels everything and still carries the load. The story shifts now. The cannons fade. The portraits dissolve. The past loosens its grip. And we are left with something quieter, closer. You, because this was never just about Abraham Lincoln. It's about the part of his story that mirrors something inside you. There's a reason this hits deeper than history class, because many of you watching this know that weight, that unspoken thing, the tiredness that sleep doesn't fix, the heaviness that follows you into good moments, the feeling of being capable but slowed by something invisible. You've called it different names: stress, burnout, overthinking, anxiety, depression, just a phase. Whatever word you use, it feels like this. You are carrying something others can't see, and you quietly believe that this disqualifies you. You watch confident people and think, they don't feel this. That's why they succeed. You assume leaders are fearless, that successful people wake up clear, energized, certain. You think your internal battles mean you're broken beyond use. Lincoln's life shatters that lie. The man tasked with holding a collapsing nation together had mornings where hope felt unreachable. He had days when the weight in his chest made movement an effort. He had nights when the future felt unbearable. And still, he led. Not because the darkness disappeared, but because he stopped waiting for it to. This is the lesson. Strength is not the absence of struggle. Strength is a decision to move while the struggle rides beside you. You think you need to fix yourself before you act. You tell yourself, I'll start when I feel better. I'll lead when I'm more confident. I'll try when my mind is clearer. But what if clarity comes after movement, not before? What if courage isn't a feeling, but a behavior? Lincoln did not wait to become emotionally perfect. He carried imperfection into purpose. And purpose changed how the pain functioned. Pain with no direction feels like punishment. Pain attached to purpose becomes fuel. That's the shift. Your struggle feels heavy right now because it feels meaningless, random, unfair. But when suffering is connected to something larger than survival, growth, contribution, responsibility, it changes shape. It still hurts, but it strengthens. You are not behind because life feels heavy. You are being trained. The nights you thought would break you, they built endurance. The disappointments, they built humility. The anxiety, it sharpened awareness. The loneliness, it built self-reliance. You thought these were weaknesses. They are conditioning. Most people quit when discomfort arrives because they've never practiced staying in it. You have. Your mind has survived storms others haven't seen. That means when real pressure arrives, business, leadership, responsibility, you already have calluses. You know how to keep moving when things feel unstable. You just haven't given yourself credit for surviving this far. Lincoln's dark secret did not make him fragile. It made him deep. It made him careful with power, sensitive to suffering, patient with failure. Your struggle can do the same if you stop treating it like proof of inadequacy. You are not weak because things feel hard internally. You are experienced in invisible battles. And that experience is transferable to work, to leadership, to discipline, to resilience. But here's the truth most people avoid. This only becomes strength if you move anyway. Suffering alone does not transform you. Endured suffering, combined with responsibility, does. You don't wait. You act while feeling uncertain. You don't wait for the weight to vanish. You learn to carry it farther. That is greatness, not glowing confidence, but steady motion under pressure. You are not disqualified because you feel broken. You are qualified in a different way. You understand pain. And people trust leaders who understand pain. They follow those who have walked through darkness without becoming bitter. The part of you you're trying to hide might be the part that makes you capable of more than you imagine. Lincoln never became a monument because he was untouched by suffering. He became one because he transformed it into service. And now the question turns to you. Will you keep seeing your struggle as a cage or as training? Because the difference between collapse and greatness often comes down to one decision: to move forward while carrying what you carry. Your darkness is not proof you can't rise. It's proof you're strong enough to have survived this long. Now, give that survival direction. Walk anyway. Build anyway. Let anyway. The light isn't found by waiting for the dark to disappear. It's found by walking through it and not stopping. Abraham Lincoln's life wasn't just a biography. It was a testament to the relentless rise. He was a man who stayed in the fight when his own biology, his own mind, and his own heart told him to surrender. He didn't just survive the darkness. He mastered it. He proved that a dark secret isn't a life sentence. It is the raw fuel for a future that will shake the world. If you're watching this right now and you're fighting a battle no one knows about, if you're carrying a weight that feels like it's crushing your chest, listen to me. You aren't weak. You are being forged. You are in the furnace of greatness. The world looks at your struggle and calls a flaw. But here at Relentless Rise, we call an advantage. Comfort makes men soft. Ease makes men forget who they are. But the man who has stared into the abyss and refused to blink, that man is dangerous. That man is unshakable. Because once you survive the war inside your own head, there is nothing the world can throw at you that will make you flinch. You have already seen the worst. Now, it's time to show the world your best. We don't study history just to memorize dates. We study the giants like Lincoln to extract the blueprint for your own ascent. Your history is not your destiny. Your pain is not your identity. It is simply the price of entry into the 1%. This is a line in the sand. You can go back to being a victim of your circumstances, or you can decide, right here, right now, to use that darkness as a lighthouse. Subscribe to Relentless Rise if you are done playing small. Join this tribe of survivors, of achievers, of the relentless. I want you to go to the comments right now. Type the words, I will endure. Write it to tell your past that it no longer owns you. Write it to tell your future that you are coming for it. Every single person who types that is making a contract with their own soul. The shadow is real, but so is the strength you found within it. Rise above. Keep climbing. We'll see you in the next one.